Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Life, Real Faith Conversations with Michael Bidwell. I am joined by my friend Kevin Coy, who is a friend of mine that goes to church. He is a veteran. He is a father, stepfather, and he is also a veteran. Uh, uh, Leads the van ministry at the church, and he has been so gracious to come on and share his testimony. So, for the first what we like to do here is for the first 5 minutes, just give a general rundown of what your testimony is. So could you do that for us?
Yeah, I can. I grew up in a dysfunctional home. Um, not a very not a very good family friendly atmosphere either. Um, there was lots of abuse, and I'll share that a little bit later. Uh, and I was in and out of church when I was younger too. Um, I actually when I was this my early teenage years, I would I'd go to church, and if I didn't know like a Bible verse, for example, I get grounded from going to church. Um,
Wow.
even in like before teenage years, that would happen, and then wow, um, the I remember this one so profoundly, but I had just gotten saved, and I turned to somebody in a church service and I asked them for a piece of candy, and the pastor thought it was funny, turned to me and said, "If you don't be quiet, I'm going to break your other ankle." And
And that was, when was that exactly?
oh, that was my sophomore year in high school.
Dang. Dang.
And, I didn't go back to that church after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then after that always I've always tried to get back into church, and I'd go back for a little bit and then something would just not sit right with me, or I'd be living in my own sinful ways.
Could you describe that? What do you mean by sinful ways?
My sinful ways of having sex outside of marriage, watching porn, stealing, lying. There's so much I was doing that I'm not proud of.
You said that you had a lot of abuse going on in the home, and could you break that down for us? Like, you don't have to go into too much detail, too much graphic detail, but can you just break that down for us? Like, who was the perpetrators, and what did you have to face?
So what I had to face, man, there was there's times when I was standing in the corner, and we would well while standing in the corner, I would get a belt across my behind while I was standing there most of the time. And at that time, it was my mom's boyfriend. I'm not going to name his name.
You don't have to.
Um, I've gotten a belt across my hand or across my hands when I got in trouble. Um, I've gotten picked up and thrown across the yard by one of my mom and her boyfriends at the time, friends. Um, Gotten beat with pots and pans. Um, Actually, we've gotten physically starved, and there's at one point where my this was another time, but my mom and her boyfriend, they had an upstairs bedroom or a like apartment of a house, and us kids were downstairs. Now, the boyfriend at the time that my mom had, um, his kids were allowed to be upstairs, and they would lock us out of going upstairs to go get any food.
So all the food was upstairs, and you were living downstairs. And was it after a certain time, or was it just you just had to fend for yourself? Period.
We had to fend for ourselves, period.
Wow, wow. And your mother, and your mother was aware of this.
Yes.
Uh, um, how did that make you feel? Like, what did you have? Like, how did that influence how you are today? How did that make you feel at the time, and how did that like influence you to? Were you angry? Were you upset? Were you like, I'm never gonna treat my children like this? Like, what was going through your mind at the time?
Well, in my mind at the time, I'm just, I'm like, how am I gonna fend for myself? How are my siblings going to get food themselves? So, I ended up picking up a habit that I'm not proud of, which, I would go find a gas station and I'd steal what we needed. And
Um,
it wasn't until after that I had our youth pastor at the time. His name is Bruce Reedfield. Uh, he actually he knew of everything that was going on, and he actually brought us uh, paper plates, silverware, cups, and he would actually bring over food to us too.
so, so it was very much like the church. You would say that the church kind of picked up where your mom refused to, where your parents, step parents, and your mother refused to do their duty. The church kind of picked up on that
Yeah.
responsibility. You would say that's cool. That is very cool. Um, so, uh, what was was your was your was your were men always going constantly in and out of the house? Was it like did you have constant stepfathers, or was it like a revolving door where it was almost like a stranger?
Yeah, it was constantly like a revolving door. Um, basically after my dad and my mom got divorced, um, like she would start dating somebody before she's broken up with them, and then just end up taking us out of that household that we were in and moving us to the next boyfriend's house. And, a lot
Like
of,
within days?
what was that?
Like within days, or
Yeah,
Like within, yeah,
pretty much within days. It's like, oh yeah, we're moving, and then we move in with this total stranger that we had nothing to know about, and most of them were abusive towards us.
yeah. Um, um. So how did you get out of that atmosphere?
You know, church for me was one way that I got out of that atmosphere, but then I had to come back to it after church and after youth group. Um, One thing that really helped me though is I had friends that I would be like, "Hey, can I come stay over at your house this weekend or this week?" And I would go out on runs because what I was doing on those runs is, and I didn't realize it till later, but I would just stuff my feelings. And
What do you mean by stuff your feelings? Just stuff them down, or
yeah,
not talk about them, or just be angry? What do you mean by stuff your feelings?
so I would just, yeah, I'd take what we were going through and I just stuff them down and just go out on a run and go clear my head because that's when I was the most happy, is out on my runs.
Really? Yeah. Wow. Um. Uh. Did you you said in the pre-interview that you know your mom had put a padlock on the fridge, and you had said that. Could you tell about that story?
Yeah, so um we were younger. I don't remember how old we were. Um but it was when she was still with my biological father. Um we had family that ended up coming over and to visit us kids and my mom, of course. And they went to go get into the fridge and they couldn't open it because there was a padlock on the refrigerator. So those family members went to her and asked her, "Well, why is there a padlock on your fridge?" Well, her response to them was, "Well, that's my food."
Just that's your food. That end, like
That
end of it. Like,
Yeah, that's all that I remember from it, is that, she said that it was her food.
hmm.
And at
Was
the
she known to hoard food like that?
yes.
So yeah, she was known to hoard food. Okay. So how did you gradually? Because you said it was a gradual. Um, in the pre-interviews, you said it was a gradual path to get out of the atmosphere. So could you break down the story of how you got out of that toxic atmosphere?
Yeah. It was actually, I believe it was my sophomore, maybe junior year. Um, my my mom had been dating this new guy, and I came home one night, and they were both drunk, and I walk in the door, and next thing I know, he starts grilling me, calling me things like a failure, a good for nothing, I would never amount to anything. Those negative things that when you have father figures that are speaking that over you, you believe them.
Yep.
And he swung back with a full fist, came within inches of my face, and my mom standing there literally 2 feet away from us. Because I told him that if he hit me, it was going to be the last thing he did. Because at that time you're an adult hitting a minor.
Because you were like 16, right?
Yeah.
17?
16, 17, yeah. So she literally told me, go up to your room, you're ruining my relationship. Like, no matter how old you are, you shouldn't have to hear that. And
No.
so I booked it up the stairs up to my room. And I had one of those old school phones that you connected into the wall and
Oh.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was like, oh, I think I know what he's talking about. But yeah, go ahead.
So I picked it up and I called my cross country coach, and he saw and heard about everything that was going on, and he finally said, okay, enough is enough. You're packing your things tonight, and I'm going to come and get you before school in the morning, and we'll take all your stuff to my house. And after we drop your stuff off at my house, I'm going to take you to school. And
Did go ahead. Go ahead.
And that was a wake up call for me, because God got me out of that toxic environment through my cross country coach.
Did your parents didn't try to stop him later on? They just didn't care.
No, they didn't really care. My bio father, he made a choice when I was around 10 years old. He was dating this woman, and she gave him an ultimatum to either choose his kids or choose her. Well, he chose her, and then my mom's boyfriend at that time ended up decking him in the face and told him he was never allowed to see us again. Now, yeah, when we got older, we would go and see him, and when we were there, I felt like a burden to him.
How so?
Just, he wasn't very interactive with us, and I don't know. It just felt like we were
He was
abandoned,
there, but
and doing the same thing as at our mom's, where we were fending for ourselves.
right. So, um, you say you said that you left and you became part of this other family. Your cross country coach's family. You become a part of their family. What did you learn from their family dynamics and your cross country coach's parenting style in general? What did you learn from him?
Man, my biggest takeaway was how he parented his kids. Now, yeah, there's discipline, but I mean, they weren't getting physically beat. Um, you weren't you weren't getting emotionally beat either. I mean, yeah, you had your, I guess your consequences of your choices, and then just at every meal that we had, they were praying at every single meal, and that's something in our household that we did not have at all. And just noticing how much quality time that they would spend with all of us, and
So the
and they're they're your biggest cheerleaders too, and they're speaking positive things over you, not negative.
with the sibling with his kids, were you accepted by his kids? There wasn't really any tension. Like, why is this kid coming in to our home? Like, nothing like that.
No, there was nothing like that. They saw me as their big brother, and they still do.
That's good. That's good. Um, I'd like to move on. After high school, you joined the Army National Guard, correct?
Correct.
Um, I would like you to break down that experience and what was your takeaway? What was your job? What was your mission? And do you have any funny stories to go along with that? So take 20 minutes and just go wild.
Go wild.
So
Well, I don't know if it'll be 20 minutes, but we'll give it a try. Um, so, I joined the military in my senior year. It was about 2 months before I turned 18. And, so I still had to approach my mom because I had to have her sign off because I was still a minor.
right,
Um, and, I wasn't living with her. So, we show up and it's like, hey, I need you to sign this for me because I'm going to go join the military. And, she's like, oh, well, I don't want you to. Like, I don't want you to go to war and get killed. And I was like, okay, well, I see your point, but I I basically gave her an ultimatum too. I'm like, you either sign this now or in 2 months down the road, I'm signing it for myself.
right.
Because,
Because you,
I mean, that's the route that I'm going.
whether
So,
she wanted to or not.
yeah.
So
Um, so after that, I signed the papers. I went to basic training in uh, Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Uh, the year in between my uh, junior and senior year in high school. And oh man, it was hot and humid down there. And for those of you who don't know, during basic training, you can only drink water when the drill sergeants tell you to drink water. And I guess my biggest takeaway was them teaching you discipline. Because when you first get off that bus, you're sitting there thinking, okay, I'm going to run this show. I'm going to, I'm going to make this drill sergeant go crazy because I'm running my mouth and, not wanting to listen to them. But I mean, as soon as you get off that bus, your reality gets put in check. And I've showed some of the videos from basic training to like other people, and I'm like, the videos that they have online, that's them going easy on you. That's like first day coming off the bus before you actually meet the actual drill sergeants. So funny story from basic training that I just have to share is, excuse me, you do this full battle rattle march, and that, I mean, you're wearing your helmet, all of your gear, and your backpack as well, and your backpack is full to the core. And as I mentioned, you can only drink water when the drill sergeant tells you to. And when they tell you, and they'll say it like this, drink water, and then you have to repeat to them, beat the heat, drill sergeant, beat the heat, and then you can actually drink your water. Well, I was already dehydrated at this point, and I went to go take a sip of my water out of my canteen, and I ended up passing out. Well, after I passed out, of course they had to have a medic come and try to wake me up. So they poked me with an IV, and they completely missed the vein. And I remember I woke up so fast, and the guy that was sticking me ended up getting a face full of, well, you can use your imagination. I'm not going to go. And then wondered why that happened, and I could hear the drill sergeant still saying, well, if you wouldn't have missed the vein, this wouldn't have happened. And to this day, I still hear the voice when I'm at work, dress right, dress, which is everything from the right side of the platoon needs to dress it all the way over to the left, and it needs to be in a perfect line.
So, would you say that discipline was definitely your takeaway from being in the military?
Yes.
Especially since it doesn't seem like you had very much discipline being instilled in you when you were growing up.
No, and my step parents, they were working on that discipline part with me and getting me on the right path. And I'm thankful for them each and every day.
Um, what was your mission? What was your MOS, or what was your job in the military?
So my mission was a 92 Yankee, which was a unit supply specialist. So with with that job, um, I would actually have to order the gear for the soldiers that they needed. And um, this is something that we had decided to do in our own unit. But Michael, when is your birthday?
The 14th of October.
So, for example, on your birthday month during drill, so in October, let's say that it's the 28th and 29th is when drill is. Well, during that month, you're bringing in your gear, and it doesn't matter if you're a sergeant or sergeant first class or a captain. My job was to have you bring out all of your gear and dump it out on the floor in front of me, and I go through your list, and if you have something that you're not supposed to have, basically I just tell you get rid of it. I don't want to see it again at your next shakedown. And then um, if they have if they don't have something that they need, then okay, well, I'll communicate with the the full-time sergeant that was over me, and I was like, hey, I need to order this for this soldier. And then we would go about ordering that and get it to that soldier.
So, did you work for the quartermaster? Is that how that works?
Not not necessarily. I mean, I just I mean we were quartermasters, but um I don't think we worked for a direct quartermaster.
Okay. You told me a story where you yourself, because it sounds like you were in charge of making sure there wasn't any contraband, but you told me that you yourself, of course, this is every soldier has a story I've heard, but you have your own contraband story. So why don't you break that down for us?
Yeah, so this was in between my senior year and my freshman year in college. I uh I went to AIT, which is Advanced Individual Training, which I mean that is basic training. You've got your basic training skills and everything that they're trying to teach you, but AIT is where you actually focus on your MOS. So, um, I was at oh gosh, I went to Fort Jackson. I went to Fort Lee, Virginia. Uh, at AIT, you also had a little more freedom. You had uh, passes that you could go out during the weekend just as long as you were back before the final formation of the day. And I tried to sneak in a bag of Skittles, and like all the soldiers were sneaking stuff in. DVDs, magazines, candy, soda, and I was trying to be as quiet as possible. But no, those Skittles, they wanted to sit there and rattle. And so, of course, I got caught. And every hour on the hour for like a week straight, I had to come down and check in. I can't remember what I had to tell the drill sergeant that was down at the desk. But at one point, they finally got so sick and tired of it because they were like, wait, why do you have to come down here? Because, it was a different drill sergeant each time. Like, well, I tried to sneak in contraband. Oh, well, don't do that again. And then I see other people that bring in M&Ms, and I'm like, how did you get that past them?
So, were you the only person that got caught? Because that's what it sounds like. It's like,
I
or
I think I was the only person that did get caught. I mean, I don't know for sure. I know other people got caught for other things because one of the rules
okay,
was that yeah, you can go out and have fun, but you better not be drunk at final formation.
right, right. Um, okay. So, after the how long were you in the military for?
So I was in for 4.5 years, and I was honorably discharged because I have a pacemaker.
Oh, so you, when did you get that pacemaker?
I got the pacemaker back in 2011.
Okay. So when did you graduate?
Oh, 07.
Okay, okay. So I would have been a freshman when you were um, a senior. Okay. Just my own curiosity piqued, and I was like, oh, I never knew that. so, um, so, after the military, could you, because we met at Pendleton first, and could you kind of break down that period of time after the military and when you got to Pendleton first?
Yeah, so um, after the military and after I was active duty in the state of Iowa, um, I was based at Camp Dodge in Iowa. Uh, I was put on ADOS orders, and they were trying to get me to um, be full time there. And I was like,
Same thing,
"Go ahead."
same mission, same mission.
Yeah, same mission, but a bigger bigger base that I was on. Um,
Mm.
I wasn't actually with just my unit. I reported to the base every day, and I actually did receiving and shipping. I actually got to unload enclosed trailers and with forklifts and uh, flatbed trailers, and then load stuff off for shipping.
Cool.
So, um, when they were in the process of trying to find me a full-time job, I decided that I was going to move out to Oregon because I had met my now ex-wife, and trying to make a long distance relationship work was not the best idea. So my step parents, they actually challenged me and told me, well, just move out there. There's nothing in Iowa that's holding you back. So I moved out here to Oregon, And I was promised a full-time job with the Pendleton, Oregon unit out here. And when I got here, they told me, "Oh, we don't have a job for you." So
So there was.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
So, excuse me. I was also looking at like full-time civilian jobs, so I started working as a valet attendant out at Wild Horse Resort and Casino. And I mean, I did that job for 5.5 years before I moved on. And that's about as long as my previous marriage lasted as well. And we have 3 kids together, 2 girls and 1 boy.
The previous marriage.
Yep. And then after that marriage had ended, and I should have known better, but I had this woman that I had met, and she asked me, if I would move in with her. And after the fact, I started thinking to myself, I don't want to be like my mom, because I noticed that pattern where I basically didn't talk to my kids or anything about it. I just went and I did it. And my kids got to come over every weekend. And one day I came home to a note that said that I needed to pack my things up and I needed to leave.
Just like that?
Just like that. And she was living in a rental house, and then we moved all of her stuff from the rental house to the house that she just had bought. And then I literally got that note after everything was moved. So,
Sorry, man.
it wasn't good. And I started thinking to myself, okay, I need to go find a church. Not just for me, but for my kids. And I had a friend that actually recommended me to Pendleton First. So I started coming there. Now, yeah, I've made my mistakes still early in my walk, where I was living in a sinful way that I wasn't proud of. I got saved in 2018, recommitted my life to Jesus, and there was one story in particular that I remember, and that was on a breakthrough night where we just came for prayer, and if somebody needed breakthrough in their life, I'm sitting there praying, and as while Pastor Phil was still there, and I was sitting there, and I'd do one of these numbers where I'd look up at him, and and as soon as he looked at me, I would look down. Like, I could not make eye contact with him. And um Wow.
Take your
So
time.
he he asked if anybody needed prayer, and like I tell you, I shot right up out of my seat and I went up front because I knew I needed it, and the Holy Spirit had showed Pastor Phil. I don't know why.
Pastor Fear. That
Yeah.
sounds like a villain, like a super villain.
So Pastor Phil, that I had an orphan spirit, and that very night, that spirit had gotten cast out of me, and I tell you what that feels like when you have that spirit is in a crowd full of people, in a church full of people. You felt alone. You feel like God's not there. You feel like he's ignoring you, like you don't matter to him. And that same night, things were spoken positively over me. Like, not like the negative things that had gotten spoken over me throughout my past life. I say past life, but like my.
I mean, it is your past life because everything is made new. So,
Yeah. I mean,
so
yeah. Um, and that's when things really shifted for me, where I started changing my ways. Um, after that time, I had met my now current wife, and uh, I went to, after that experience, I went up to Wallowa Lake, and I went up on the Chief Joseph Day trails, and I went by myself. So the hike that I went on was an 8-mile hike. Um, and I ended up. I'm glad I turned around when I did. I'm I'm sitting there going up this hill, and my body is like telling me to stop. And so I'd stop. I catch my breath, and then I start walking up the hill a little bit more, and then that just continue. And finally, you know, you can guess what happened when I decided, okay, enough's enough. My body can't take it anymore. I need to turn around and I need to go down now because this is not good. So I ended up making it all the way down the down back to where I was camping at. Little did I know that where I turned around was actually a cougar migration path. And
right.
and the second thing that stood out to me during that hike is on my way down, you know, well, actually during the whole entire hike, I had a waterfall I had to cross, so I had to try and find my footing because the rocks were wet and it was hard to even get across it. And then you had rocks that were all over the path as soon as you got past the waterfall. I mean, it just looked like, I mean, they were big boulders too. And then I had fallen down tree limbs that I had choices. I could either go under, over, or around. And some of them you could only go over. Some of them you had to go around. And I heard the voice, you know, sometimes in life when we walk with Christ, we'll have obstacles, but we can overcome them with Him.
Good. So, did you actually see a cougar?
I I was lucky enough I didn't. But the
So,
park ranger told me later that where I went was actually a cougar migration path, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome. I guess next time I'm not going
so
alone."
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm glad you're not kitty food. So, um, so how we met was through Pendleton for studies from 2020 to about 2022, I think,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Give or take. And what did you learn from that experience? Because you went from that into leading the van ministry. And what did you take from that experience? And Pastor Wes, who was leading it at the time, what did you learn from him?
You know what I learned from that experience is just learning more about God and the heart of God, and learning learning more about Him, and about more about how to read the Bible too. And
Cool.
yeah.
Cool. You said that you remarried after your divorce, and that um, I mentioned in the beginning that you're a stepfather as well as a father. How was that transition from being from for the kids for and how did you step into that role of being a stepfather? And what did you choose? What did you choose to do differently than from what you saw as a child?
You know, honestly, it was a huge adjustment for not just me, but for all of us, because we had
How
our,
many?
go ahead.
How many do? How many do you have? I'm sorry, I should have asked that before.
So we have 5 kids all together.
And fun fact, you had 6 siblings, so that was literally one off, right?
Yeah.
That's fun fact. So I just find that interesting. But I'm sorry. Continue.
So I know it was a huge adjustment for all of us because we had our own family traditions, our own views on how we would live life, our own hurts that we carried from previous um, relationships, and how I adjusted was just with grace, you know, understanding that they've got things that they've walked through too that they might not openly express. But one thing that has shifted for me is being there for them and having them understand, hey, I want to help you through this. I don't want to see you suffer. If you're struggling with something, please talk to me. Like, I don't want to have you bottle it up and then have resentments or regrets later in life.
It's good. So, you talked. I've mentioned a few times that you are involved in the van ministry at the local at our church, and you actually lead that ministry. So, what has been your biggest takeaway as a leader, and what would you say the to somebody that wants to be a leader?
So, what what the van ministry has taught me over the couple years that we've been doing it now is patience. There's a lot of times where you'll have somebody that says, okay, for example, we have 15 people that we're going to pick up. Okay, well, can you confirm that with me? Because like I need to have 2 vans scheduled if it's 15 people for one stop, because the van can only fit 13 passengers besides you and your accountability partner. And uh, that's the biggest thing is patience for me, because there's a lot of times when you're going from XYZ to go pick up ABC, and you might have 2 vans full, or you might have to make two separate trips if you don't have another van available. Um, and I guess the coolest story that I have, being the van ministry leader, is watching those clients that you go and pick up, where they start out when they first start coming to church, or even if some of them come to celebrate recovery, watching. Go ahead.
Explain to everyone what Celebrate Recovery is, so that we know.
So,
I mean, I know, but
Celebrate Recovery is a Christ-centered recovery group. It is for anybody that deals with hurts, habits, and hangups. It is not just for your typical drug and alcohol addicts. It is for codependency, life issues, for me, anger issues. And I struggled with I struggled with a soda addiction too, that I ended up kicking to the curb. But just watching where they start out, like when they first start coming to church, and just starting to get into the groove of things, to where they make that decision to follow Christ and take that plunge in that water and get baptized. I mean, for me, that's a spiritual high, because we we helped plant the seed for each one of those clients, and we got to watch God water it.
It's good stuff. Good stuff. Before I let you go, there's about three questions I'd like to ask you. First is, what would you like to tell your kids as they grow up, and as you know, um, as as they grow up, and what would you like to impart to them, um, both
So,
both step and not?
so what I would have to tell them is to be yourself and not be afraid to be yourself, and to not pretend and wear that mask. Because the more that you wear that mask, even I'm guilty of it. At times I could sit there and put on the dad mask and wear that and not show them any emotion that, you know, that I'm hurting. But what they need to know, especially the boys, is that is it is okay for a man to cry. That is how I was raised, is that, oh, you don't show emotion, you can't cry. And I want them to see that that's okay.
Uh, Second of all, if you had a DeLorean, like I said in the pre-interview, if you had a DeLorean and you went 88 miles an hour, uh, what would you, what would you what would you say to your previous to your teenage self? Because it sounds like to me that's where the catalyst was, is your teenage years. What would you what would you impart to him to make the transition a little smoother?
That's a hard question. Um, I would have to just say trust God, you know. There's so many trials during my teenage years where things just drove me away from God, and to just, you know, not go down that road. If I realistically could go back, I would say don't go down that road. This is what it leads to.
Yeah. Um. Say. Same question, different person. Uh. Because you seem to have had a lot of trouble with your mom, and if you could do the same thing, DeLorean 88 miles an hour, um, um, what would you say to her, the younger her?
The younger her, I would honestly go back and I would have grace, but I would tell her that she's loved by God, and to lean on him, that she doesn't need a man in her life to make her happy. Because, knowing what I know now, that's what she was ultimately chasing.
Yeah. Yeah. And final question. Um, um, Final question. When you get to heaven, when you finally leave this mortal coil, and you finally see your Savior face to face, what would you like? What would you say to him, and What would you like for him to say to you?
Oh man. I know we did the did the pre-interview with that one.
Mhm.
Um, I think as I don't I don't think I really quite understand why I went through what I went through in my younger years. And I mean, I'll probably understand it as I continue to walk this path with Jesus, and that's to help the younger generation that's coming up behind us. But I think I would probably have to ask, um, what what made him choose me to help that younger generation? What stood out to him the most? And I guess what I would want him to say to me is, you made a difference. Look at all of these people that you drew closer to me.
Yeah, it's okay, dude. We all cry. Um, I guess you gave me another question, so bonus. Um, what would you say to the um to the generations that come after? What would be your parting words?
Just like I would have to tell my kids is to be yourself, not to believe those lies. Don't believe the lies of the enemy. Don't let the world define you. Trust God and who He says that you are, because ultimately His opinion is the number one that matters. Now, yeah, you can have people that speak positive things over you, and that's wonderful. But when you when you know who your identity is in Christ, that is a game changer.
That's good. That's good. Well, I think we're done here. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Kevin, for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this with us. It was a good time, and I think this will help a lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And I just like to also put out there, and I know we discussed this on our pre-interview too, is I don't want what I went through to make anybody have pity on me. It has made me, it's made me into the man I am today, which is a better dad, and a better husband to my wife, and overall just a better human. Because I've walked that all, and I've seen where I was to where I am now, and it's changed me.
And I think I agree with everything you just said. Like, I didn't know you when you were a kid. I would have been far below you, but well, not that far, but I would have been. But you have definitely, I think, given your track, given your story, the journey of your story, you come from a long way, and I think you will continue to help a lot of people. But thank you for joining the podcast, and I hope that just thank you. So thank you everyone, and good day.
Thank you. Love you, bud.